Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Late Night Yap. In this episode, we're going to be reading our spooky, scary stories, our October episodes, which I'm probably not going to be in costume or makeup every episode for this month, but at least once a week, we're going to have, a new little theme going. So, this episode, though, we're going to read spooky stories instead of doing any yap sessions with our, documentaries or anything like that. This is just going to be straight up Reddit stories. These stories come from a thread. Does anybody have any true creepy stories? So, we're going to go ahead and get into our first story. A few years ago, my brother would get a call on his cell phone around 2 to 3 a.m. every night. He would answer, and it was this hellish sounding noise, like static mixed with screams. He changed his cell number after a month of this, and it stopped. Then, after a week or so, it began again, the exact same noise at the exact same time. Finally, one day he decided to back dial the call. It was an old man that had no clue what he was talking about. Still, the calls persisted. If he didn't answer, it would call a few more times, no messages were left. He decided to say screw it, ended his contract with a cell phone company and switched to a new one, and then got another new number. And you guessed it, the screaming static calls continued after a short delay. By this time, he was terrified every night, unsure of what was happening. He backdialed the number again and got a different person. Around this time, he lost his job and his phone. The call stopped, of course. His phone was disconnected now, so one day my mom asked me to listen to the weird message she got on her home phone. It was the static screaming. We showed my brother and he was freaking out. He backdialed the number again and said it was a number that was disconnected this time. Never heard from that number again. That is creepy. What do you guys think? Who do you think was calling him? Was it a goose? A goosey? I don't know. I don't know. All right, we are going to read our second story now. This happened to a friend of mine. She told me about it a year or so ago. We'll call her M. M is in her late 20s and works at an English tutor center in South Korea. One evening a few years ago, she was tutoring a high school boy. They were studying pretty late and the bus stopped running. Being a long way from his house, the boy asked if he could crash on the floor overnight and get the first bus the next morning. M was very reluctant because inviting a teenage male student to stay the night didn't sound like a great idea, but he was begging her and eventually she relented. They went back to her one-bedroom apartment and she got into bed while he laid on a blanket on the floor and they fell asleep. A few hours later, maybe 2 a.m., the boy wakes M up. I'm really hungry, he says. Let's go get some food. M opens her eyes and looks up at him in disbelief. Food? Now? It's 2 a.m. Go back to bed. The student insists, no, I'm so hungry. Let's go eat something. She tells him that there's some ramen in the kitchen and he can fix himself some. This doesn't satisfy him. He doesn't want ramen. There's a 24-hour place down the road. Let's go there. Eventually, after several minutes of persuasion, the boy gets M to come with him to go to the restaurant. They leave the apartment and head out, and as soon as they're on the street, the boy turns to M and says, I'm not hungry. I woke up in the middle of the night and looked under your bed, and there's a man sleeping there. Woo! Oh, the chills, the chills. They called the police to discover that a homeless man had been living in M's apartment, sleeping under her bed for over 2 months. The boy only saw him because he was laying on the floor, so he had a clear view under the bed. The police arrested the man, and thankfully there were no other issues, but that's by far the creepiest thing that's ever happened to anyone I know. Oh my gosh. Remember to check under your beds anytime that you go to sleep because that is so scary. Literally the chills that I got. Like that is a crazy story. Okay, now let's get to let's go ahead and get into the third story because these are getting good. I remember a story a high school teacher told me that always stuck with me. My former teacher was home alone when she was a child, and at some point in the 70s, probably, a man knocked on the door. She opened the main door but kept the screen locked. He said he was from the gas company and wanted to talk to her parents. She told him that they weren't home, and he, without missing a beat, tried to start forcing his way into the home. When he found the screen door to be locked, he pulled out a box cutter and started cutting through the screen. The teacher ran and hid in the clothes hamper in the parents' closet. She said that she sat there for about 10 minutes before the police arrived. Thank goodness a neighbor saw everything and called the police, or she probably would be gone. Also, to put the cherry on the freaking creepy Sunday, they found the intruder hiding in the attic. She told us that as a cautionary tale to lock the doors and windows when home alone. Of course, naturally, I would go home from school alone for hours. My goodness, why would your teacher tell you that? Does she know that you go home alone? Because why would, that is crazy. I mean, I know she wants you to be safe and lock your doors, but dang, girl. My grandfather passed away last year, sometime when my son was maybe a year old. We had dinner with the whole family every Friday night, so my son had seen him several times. My grandfather was very quiet, proud man, and he thought he was alone or unseen. He would make silly faces at my son to get a laugh. A couple of nights after the funeral, my son, who liked to crawl in bed in the middle of the night, started just laughing uncontrollably at 2 a.m. So I get out of bed to see what's going on, and I find my son sitting in the middle of the living room in the dark laughing. I say, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing?" In toddler, he speaks, "Papa funny." I got a little nervous for some reason and wanted to pick him up and bring him to the room for the rest of the night. And as I'm hauling him away, he says, "Bye, Papa," and blows a kiss, absolutely nothing I can see. I know that, personally, though, I feel for me, some people believe, that the spirits still linger after passing, but some also believe that a lot of them are not spirits and there's something sinister. That, cause yeah, so I don't know, but that would scare the heck out of me. A few weeks ago, my girlfriend and I were sleeping together, and when I woke up to her saying, "What are you doing?" She sometimes talks in her sleep, but this sounded so coherent and urgent that it jolted me awake, and I asked what she was talking about. She then woke up and said that she thought she saw someone at the end of the bed. Thinking it was just a dream or semi awake illusion, we thought nothing of it and went back to sleep. About an hour later, I woke up and saw someone standing on the bed with the sheets wrapped up and twisted to their neck. I didn't know what to do, but first thing that came out of my mouth was, "What are you doing?" My girlfriend woke me up. I had been dreaming the exact same thing she did and said the exact same thing. I know it's the power of suggestion or whatever, but F that. One of the comments says, "Thanks for ruining my night's sleep." I mean, honestly, yeah, because I don't think so. What the heck? When I was in eighth grade, I went on a school trip that was called the Louisiana Tour. It was mostly going around significant sites in South Louisiana. One of places was Myrtle's Plantation, which was considered to be the most haunted places in the country. There's all kinds of stories about the place, but at one point we were standing in a room as part of a larger group and Tour was talking about something. I don't remember what, but as I'm standing there, I start to hear what sounds like someone hitting a piano key. After I heard it a few times, I started to look around for the source of the noise, but I didn't see a piano, but I kept hearing it. So I asked my friends who were standing near me if they heard it, and they said no. When I heard it again, I said, "There it is again," and that they must have heard it. They thought I was crazy. So I went back to looking around the room. Everyone's eyes were on the tour guide except for one woman. She caught my eye and pointed at me and then at her ear with a questioning look. I realized she was asking if I heard it too, and I nodded. At this point, the tour guide starts telling a story about a soldier who had died there and that he played the piano, and multiple guests had reported hearing him playing in the night. I honestly didn't know what to think. I guess I still don't. I talked to the woman as we were all leaving the room, and she heard the exact same thing as me, but her husband and son had not heard it. Now, there is another comment here that says, "I work at the Myrtles Plantation and I have so many of these stories and events that visitors tell me." The creepiest one, in my opinion, is that you can sleep at the plantation, kind of like the bed and breakfast. Well, we have a room that is filled with those creepy ceramic dolls, and there's one doll that was one of the children's favorites and was always in the bed with her at night. The child later passed, too long to explain, and the doll stayed in the bed with her. When we started to When we started to house guests and the Myrtles, we kept the doll on the bed in the memory of the child. The first night when someone slept in the room, they moved the doll to get more comfortable. In the morning, the doll was back on the bed with its hands on the guest's throat. Oh my gosh. She became outraged, accusing that we did something in her room. No one went in or out of the room all night. The next guest moved the doll as well, and when he was sleeping, he heard tapping on the wood floors. He woke up and noticed the doll on the floor the sound was coming from. Everyone who stays in the room and moves the doll will come back and go in its bed. Someone said, please install a camera in that room for real though, like, or just like stop letting people sleep in that room. I posted this story before to another thread a while ago, but it seems like the perfect place for it and it's fairly short, so here it is. When I was growing up, one of my best friends told me about a very creepy situation involving him, his younger brother, and a man in the window. When my friend and his little brother were younger, they shared a bedroom. They were some years apart, but his younger brother was born with a multitude of different health issues, including multiple sclerosis. I can't even say it. MS. And he's confined to a wheelchair and cannot care for himself. So, to keep an eye on him overnight when his parents couldn't, they shared a bedroom. One night, my friend randomly woke up for no particular reason and happened to glance over at his younger brother, but noticed something very startling: the strange silhouette of a man wearing a top hat looking through the window of his younger brother's crib. The first thing my friend did was jump and turn the lights on, ran to his parents' room to tell him what they saw. When the parents came back to the room to investigate, his younger brother was having a seizure in the crib. Oh my God. A few of his family members said that the younger brother's guardian angel standing in the window at night, but my friend believes it was death. It's also pretty unsettling to me. Honestly, that is like a pretty wild story. When I was younger, I had an imaginary friend who lived in this massive antique dresser. We'd chill out, and I vividly remember him telling me stories, although I have absolutely no recollection of what they actually were. I remember one day talking to my parents about it. Dad traveled quite a bit, so he wasn't up to date with what I was into, and when I started telling him about my dresser buddy, he wanted to know his name. It was something innocent like Peter or Patrick, but I could still see him going white in the face. I drew Peter or Patrick out for him the very next day, and him and my uncle took that dresser out and burned it. It wasn't until a few years later I found out my dad's little brother, my uncle, who had the same friend with the same name who lived in the same antique dresser. After a few months of the typical imaginary friend crap, my uncle started having night terrors and couldn't sleep because of it. It got so bad that they had to move him out of his room before he managed to get back to normal. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. Skim through the comments and probably answer most of these questions. Oh, okay. Somebody gave him um for the story. They gave him like a gold, which is something that you can do on Reddit. So, the first question, the dresser was an old dark wood ugly thing. As far as we know, it belonged to my great grandfather who had always been some weird family histories to be believed. Two, dad never talked about what actually was in the dresser, and he was the only one to believe the brother when they were kids. The parents didn't really care because they thought the kids were being kids, and who honestly believed in spooky ghosts back then? Must have been a shock that 30 years later his own son started having the same friend. The my uncle's night terrors ended when they moved to another room. The bedroom he was in with the dresser was converted into a little sitting room since it had some nice views. It remained relatively unlived until dad moved our family into the home that the room became mine. I haven't seen my uncle in 14 years now. I don't really speak to him since he is on the other side of the world. Afraid to bring something like this up since I know he struggles with depression and alcoholism, so I would hate to add this to his plate. To everyone asking what he looked like, I remember a tiny old man, not like man tiny, but kid sized tiny. He had very large hands and long fingers, which turn led to how I draw people even today. Hands come out longer and larger than they would normally be, smelled of wood, mothballs, old clothes, and what I now know is mold. Now, the first comment says there's always something more horrific about a situation when your dad gets freaked out. I mean, honestly, he literally was like, I'm burning this dresser is gone. Like, it's gots to go. All right, you guys. Now that is going to be the end of our spooky stories for the month of October. This is our first week with our spooky stories. I'm going to do another episode next week with another set of spooky stories, so I hope to see you guys all there. And if you liked this video, just make sure that you give me a subscribe and don't forget to like and comment down below. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!